Hey, Russell. That was a winter coat I was looking for. That's a winter coat I'm looking for, not a summer coat.
Yeah, right. I haven't heard back, but I'll phone him again today. I don't
Okay,
even know if he's home, but I'll find out.
Thanks.
So you all have 6 minutes to get a snack or stretch your legs, because we can't start until 11:15.
I noticed we're live, though. So
Yes, we are. So, yeah.
be careful. Yeah. Oh, what's going on here?
All right. It is 11:15. We'll just let everyone come back on screen. We're missing Director Crompton.
We have quorum.
We do. Let's go ahead. Could I have someone move the approval of the agenda? Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Stoner. Call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. 4.1. Could I have someone move Ministerial Order M192? Moved by Director Elliott, seconded by Director Demare. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Is now the time for rise and report, CAO Helmer, or shall we carry that forward? Move it now?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we can do that now. For the item related to the staffing.
Okay. Can I have someone move that? Moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Stoner. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Could I have someone move the consent agenda, items 6? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Demare. Anything to discuss from that? Go ahead, Director Birch-Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a comment about 6.4.4, the letter of support on universal no-cost access to all prescription contraception.
6.4.4. Okay, so we will pull that from the consent agenda and add it to another section of the agenda. Director Clark.
We can add that as 12.12.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that item pulled, could I call the question? Anyone opposed on the consent agenda? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we'll move on to 8.1. EAD Committee recommendations of January 13th, improving radio communication infrastructure. First up. Hello, Director Crompton. I have someone move that. Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Stoner. Anyone, any comments or questions about that? I don't want to blow through this because I think these are important. Director Rainbow, did you have any comment about that? It's in your area.
I'm having trouble getting my agenda up on the screen. So could you just tell me what this one is?
Yeah, that the board approved staff entering into an agreement for the supply, installation, and maintenance of a radio repeater on Anvil Island, including the monthly ongoing subscription costs for these services for the BVFD.
Yeah, no, my only comment is that's absolutely necessary for them to function efficiently.
Great. Okay.
I'll move
Any
it.
other? Yeah, it's moved and seconded.
Okay.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 8.1.2 Wild Safe Coordinator. There was no attachment, but this is an application for a grant program to bring on a coordinator if the funding is allowed. Moved by Director Birch-Jones, seconded by Director Stoner. Any questions or comments? Director Mack, go ahead. No, just moving it. Thank you. Anyone opposed? Oh, no, go ahead, Director Richmond.
Can staff just remind me if this is successful, if we get the money for this position, is this position region-wide or was this specific to certain parts of the region?
Director Rainbow, go ahead.
Yeah, last year it was targeted to specific areas, and I know that because one of the areas was mine in the Britannia Beach Ferry Creek Department, and also I believe up in Area C. But I think that was the extent of it.
He also did some work in B.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Go ahead, Director Demare.
He also coordinated with the wild safe coordinator we had up here also.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yep.
Do you have a separate one up there in Area A that operates independently of the SLRD, or?
Yes, yeah, it was the Coastal Cascades funded a position.
Okay. Go ahead, Director Richmond.
Yeah, I just bring it up because I know one of our local bearware groups has been asking for a little support if that position does happen. I just wasn't sure if that would be available or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further comments or questions? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. 8.1.3, the service establishment for the LAFs for Lillawitt Agricultural and Food Security. Go ahead, Director Birch Jones, speaking to the motion.
I'd like to move this, and a similar motion was made in May of 2019, but partly due to the backlog that staff is suffering and the reason why we need more staff, I think. And optimistically, if we're successful in the NDIT application for an intern, this would be a beautiful thing for them to work on. But I really would like to move this along before my 4-year term is over. I'd like to move the Service or Cost Center be established for the Lillawitt Agriculture and Food Society LAFs, and that the staff begin the process in 2021.
Okay, so moved by Director Birch Jones, seconded by Director Demare. Director Demare, did you have any other comments? Nope. Okay. So recognizing that this will be a part of our discussion tomorrow, and obviously needs to fit into the budget, but moved as laid out. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none. Any opposed? Oh, sorry, Director Rainbow.
Just a comment that this is one service area. I fully support this, by the way. I'm not arguing against it, but it's one service area. And as we move forward and talk about staffing and improving services in the electoral areas, this is going to be a common feature. We're going to need to set up more service areas, and we should keep that in mind when we discuss staffing. Thank you.
Precisely.
As long as this one's at the top.
Well, the list is long and the pile is deep, and we want to make sure that we're not overloading the staff, and this is a complex process, so we want to make sure that we have adequate resources, and so we will continue this discussion forward. But I think you have enough to work with there, CAO Helmer. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yes,
Anyone?
thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 8.1.4 is rise and report from the EAD committee meeting that staff bring an information report on the annual basis to the open portion regarding bylaw enforcement complaints over the previous 12-month period, moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Mack. Any comments? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Question.
Yep, go ahead.
Does that mean that the report that we received earlier from Bylaw, that's now completely public?
Yes. No. Director Clark.
I believe this is a different report than what was provided earlier.
Ah, glad I asked.
Me too, because I'm a little bit confused. Okay, so go ahead, CAO Helmer, and then Director Demare.
Thank you, Chair. It's my understanding that what the EAD was looking to get was something that was more like a pie graph that's going to show in the aggregate. We've had so many complaints in this electoral area and so many complaints related to this type of topic.
Okay. So it'll be more of a compilation compared with the detail that you'll get in closed, which makes sense. When I keep, okay, and Director Demare, go ahead.
Yeah, it's basically just a table with the categories of the complaints and and by area.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Moving on to 8.2, Northern Economic Development and Initiatives Committee recommendations. Someone move that. Moved by Director Birch-Jones, seconded by Director Demare. Anyone opposed or any comments? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for the reports. Okay, now we're on 8.3, PVIS recommendations of January 14th.
I'll move that.
Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Stoner. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Oh, Director Birch-Jones?
I just did have one question, and I wondered about the fireworks, and I wondered, is it, when it says 5,000 per year over 5 years, is that 1,000 each year or 5,000 each year? And it's just, am I curious? Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I will call the question because we're moving this whole thing as a gigantic block. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, 9.1, request for decision on the MFA spring borrowing security issue bylaw for the Pemberton Waste Transfer Station. Are we deferring that to the next meeting? I feel like I saw a note that we were deferring this.
Thank you, Chair. We were still planning to proceed with the borrowing bylaw because there are plans regarding the transfer station and there's only borrowing twice a year.
Okay, thank you. Could I have someone move by Director Mack? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Rainbow. Any further discussion? Call a question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Excuse me, Chair. So that was the first, and another motion for adoption, please.
Thank you. Can I have someone move adoption? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Rainbow. Call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. At 9.2, Ponderosa Estate Zoning Amendment Bylaw, second reading. And I see Director Needham is here. Director Mack, go ahead.
I was going to move this, but can we move the 4 that's all at once?
Director Elliott, go ahead.
I love everybody's energy to put motions on the floor, but if you have questions, it's really hard to get them in. So maybe we should all just leave space for that.
Yeah.
As we introduce new topics. I can't remember, Director Needham, what our terms are for TUPs for short-term rentals. So how many years you can have them before you need to rezone?
Through the chair, it's 3 years, up to 3 years, and up to 3 years for an extension.
Thank you.
And that's a maximum of 1 extension, is that right?
If the application does not, it can't be significantly the same application. So if there's some tweak to the application, it could be renewed again for another 3 years.
Thank you. That answers my question. Any further discussion or questions for Director Needham? Seeing none. Call a question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 9.3, Mcgilvery Falls Zoning Amendment Bylaw for second reading. Could I have someone move that? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Rainbow. Are there any questions or comments? Nope, seeing none. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And that's the, sorry, for that's again. 9.4, short-term rentals and bed and breakfast zoning amendments for second reading and public hearing. And the public hearing to be advertised with Director Demare and Director Birch Jones as the alternate. Could I have someone? Do we do these one at a time? Go ahead, Director Stoner.
Yeah, I just had a quick question on this item. I was curious, reading through the report, if a good neighbor agreement is required simply for to receive a change of use permit, or if it's only a requirement for those applying for a TUP.
I'll pass that along to Director Needham.
Yes, through the chair, it would only be required for a TUP application.
And follow up on that, I'm just curious why we would set that as a different bar for a change of use permit versus a TUP.
Well, this was based on the last report that we brought to the board. So we were directed to basically take the route that we've taken. Typically for a change of use, we wouldn't have a good neighbor agreement. We've not done that in the past. So yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, Director Richmond.
Maybe more of a comment, but I'm looking forward to the public hearing on this. You know, we've batted this around in a number of different forms through zoning, going back a couple of years, zoning amendments, and so I'm anxious to hear from the public. C.L. Helmer, prior to your time when we've had some of these zoning amendments go through to public hearings, there have been comments that some of the more remote parts of Area C weren't informed or they didn't know. So, you know, and perhaps our electronic methods of getting the message out aren't entirely enough for that part of the area. So like up the Darcy corridor and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to plant that seed to make sure that we find as many ways as possible to advertise the public hearing, so we make sure all the Area C residents are aware, because there have been those comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Richmond. Director Demare, go ahead.
A couple of points. Mike is correct, and I think some we do have at the Slrd facility in Goldbridge an opportunity with bulletin boards to put them up there also, along with electronic versions.
I think that's a really good point, to go to community notice boards where people are, meet people where they are. I think that that's a really important thing to do, and it's pretty easy, but gets the message out in these circumstances. So
yep. I've got one more comment. Sure. on the bed and breakfast. I had no idea if they got taxed or they didn't get taxed. So I actually downloaded a PDF file from the provincial government and the federal government on the tax requirements for bed and breakfast. So I think that whole aspect to it, and having people use the change in use and the TUPs and so on and so forth, that somewhere, somehow, that documentation gets discussed with the people that are applying for each of those, so that everybody's aware of the tax implications.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, we had a mover and a seconder, I believe. Director Clark, you were good on that? Okay. Okay, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I see Mr. Coyote is here. Are you here for 9.5?
Yes. Chair Ford, I just had a question. So the board passed 2 resolutions at the August 29th, 30th, 2018 meetings. The first one being that bed and breakfast use category would be removed as of right from all zones. We are requesting that the board rescind that resolution. So this would allow bed and breakfast use to continue as is based on change of use. And then the second resolution that we are requesting the board rescind is related to temporary use permits. So again, the board initially resolved not to use temporary use permits as a way to legitimize short-term rentals. And in order to have a TUP system in place for short-term rentals in Area C, we'd like to have this resolution also rescinded.
Go ahead, Director Richmond.
I'll be ready to make that motion, rescind those motions. But I thought the bed and breakfast definition we took off because it was redundant. Once we made the changes to the short-term rentals, I thought the B&B definition was redundant. That's why staff suggested taking it off.
Staff, I believe the motion, the initial resolution was to remove bed and breakfast as of right use, which implies that in order to have a bed and breakfast, you have to apply for a rezoning or a temporary use permit. This was initially brought forward for all the areas back in 2018.
Okay, I will move to rescind. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Director Clark.
Thank you. So I have the first 2 that's have been carried. And then we have those motions rescinding they do follow along the list. If we perhaps could do the next 2 that's in the order on the agenda, if that's okay, and then we'll get to then we could do the last 3 that's together.
Perfect. Okay, so I have Director Richmond and moving it and seconded by Director Birch Jones. Director Mack, anyone opposed? Sorry, are there any discussion on the second 2 that's? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So we've done the first 2, we've done the second 2. And?
I'll move the next 3.
And then moving the next 3 by Director Demare, seconded by Director Mack. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. I'm sorry, I'm getting absolutely bombarded by texts from outside this meeting. It's really distracting me. Thank you all, and thank you, Mr. Coyote, for being here. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. LaFrance.
Hello.
We are on 9.5, right? Okay. Okay, so we're on the service establishment amendment bylaws to increase the maximum tax requisition for, and do you want to do these one at a time? See, sorry. Do you want to talk to us present first, Ms. LaFrance?
Sure, yeah. So we review annually all of the services that can have their tax, the maximum tax requisition increased, and that's kind of a normal process. Every 5 years, you can increase a service 25%, and that's just part of the regulations that local government allows. And so there are only 2 services that I'm requesting to increase, and that's Goldbridge Water, which is a very small increase, but because it increases the rate per thousand, so some services have both a maximum dollar requisition amount and a maximum rate per thousand amount, and Goldbridge Water has both. So it's always the higher of either the dollar amount or the rate per thousand amount that you can tax on. So with this bylaw amendment, we're allowed to increase that taxable rate slightly. So it's not a big change for 2021 budget, but eventually if the assessment base grows, you know, there will be more requisition, maximum requisition allowable for that service. So I'm just suggesting that we do increase it, even though it's very small. And the other service is the Lillawitt landfill service. And this is a shared service between Area A, B, and Lillawitt. So I wanted to bring this to the January board so District of Lillawitt had the time to review it with their council and time for us to bring it back and approve it before the budget was approved. And this isn't needed at the moment, but in maybe the 5 to 6 year timeline, potentially we might need it for additional operations, as there's always more legislation coming down, more recommendations on how to monitor the landfill and all these additional reporting requirements. So the management aspects are getting a little bit more expensive. So this is more future thinking. Currently, the requisition amount for the Lillawitt landfill is $50,000. So this maximum requisition amount would be $100,000, the new amended bylaw. And approximately, currently, the $50,000 maximum tax requisition is a $28 tax hit for a $500,000 house. And so at the maximum amount of $100,000, it would be $56 for a $500,000 house. And that's not expected to happen until 5 or 6 years down the road. But this service hasn't been increased since the inception of the service establishment bylaw in 1993.
I see a question from Director Birch-Jones. Go ahead.
Just a comment in support, and thank you, Suzanne, thank you, Chair, that we're hoping with the organics feasibility study to increase some of the programs at the landfill, which will require, of course, more staff time and ideally extend the life of this landfill, which I think is a very prudent move for us to do. So, of course, I support it. Thank you.
Go ahead, Director Demare.
I would like to move the 2 first stats, please.
Okay, so we're moving the Goldbridge water
Goldbridge
system.
water. Yeah.
Yeah. Moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Elliott. Any other questions for Ms. LaFrance about water? Seeing none, thank you. I'll call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now the next 2 that's regarding the Lillawitt and area landfill increase, moved by Director Birch-Jones, seconded by Director Stoner. Any further discussion? Seeing none, anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you for the report. Okay, moving on to number 10.1, CAO verbal update.
Thank you, Chair. The only thing there is really just a reminder for directors regarding their expense reports and to get anything that is 2020 submitted for our year end. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Seeing none, can we move receipt? Moved by Director Elliott, seconded by Director Demare. Call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. 10.2. I see Director Needham. Go ahead, Director Elliott.
Thanks. We had quite a lengthy discussion in June about the Tiger Bay development. So I'm just wondering where things are at with that and when it might come back.
Go ahead, Director Needham.
Yes, through the chair. We're still working through a number of items that were requested by the board. So I'm actually not certain when that will be back, but it will be back. I can guarantee that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Needham on 10.2? Seeing none. Don't want to rush, but I am happy to answer questions, have questions or comments. Okay, so let's move because we do not have a mover or seconder for this information report. Moved by Director Crompton, seconded by Director Stoner. Further discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So this is being brought back. Or this is new. This is new. Any questions about 10.3, which is the Metro Van RGS amendment to redesignate regional parklands to conservation and recreation regional land use designation? Did anyone want to speak to this? I see both Claire and Kim ready to answer questions from anyone. No questions? Would anyone like to move it for receipt? Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Stoner. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both for being here. 10.4. Sorry, folks. I need a printed copy next time. There we are. Agricultural Land Commission non-farm use, and staff does not support and recommends that the board does not support this. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Director Richmond.
I would maybe just like to hear from staff very quickly the highlights of their recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Director Needham.
Yes, through the chair. This is an application for non-farm use, and you'll see in your reports there are some images there showing what this currently looks like on the site. Essentially, the proponent wants to use their ag land in the Upper Squamish Valley as a bit of a garage in order to do repairs on large equipment and trucks. They have stated that they had a hard time finding zoned land in Squamish that they could, do this sort of business on, and so they'd like to do it on the farmland. So if you review the policy analysis that we've set out in our report, you'll see that this really does not align with any SLRD policies, nor does it align with the recently approved Squamish Valley Agricultural Plan. So really, all of our policies really support farmland as the highest and best use of land zoned AGR and land in the agricultural land reserve. We do not think that this will pass the test through the Agricultural Land Commission, and it certainly doesn't meet any of our policies. I think there are concerns also about visibility and noise impacts to neighbors, and also the precedent-setting nature of such an application. And so for those reasons, staff are not recommending that this application move forward.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead, Director Rainbow. Oh, Director Rainbow, we can't hear you.
Yeah, just a comment from the community. The staff, the board will get full community support in sort of objecting to this application. There are questions about what are we doing, so I'm happy to see this, and I think we should support staff recommendation. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Director Elliott.
So by making the decision not to proceed now, if by some happenstance the ALC approved it, then we would have to deal with it. But what you're saying is you don't want to work on it now.
Through the chair, this application, if the staff recommendation were to be moved by the board, this application would be stopped in its tracks right now. It would not be forwarded onto the ALC, and there would be no ALC decision making.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I think it's just want to add some context from the district. We are trying to actually protect our light industrial and medium industrial space, and we're doing a space needs analysis now with a whole bunch of industries. So it is sad to me that someone's been pushed out onto ALC land, but we are trying to fix our own problem. We need to make sure we have heavy duty mechanics in the area that can fix these kinds of trucks, but probably not on ALC land or ALR land.
Okay, so a question for Director Elliott then. Through your needs assessment, do you foresee that there will be space at some point that this group could find the land that they say they haven't been able to find so far? Is that the hope?
I think it's too hard to say.
Okay.
The land is very expensive now.
Yeah,
that's part of the problem.
Right. I see a hand from Director Rainbow. Go ahead.
Just a comment on odd, and if they did try, I don't think that it's a question of cost. They didn't want to pay the money, and certainly what they've said in the community is that we can do this, and who's going to stop us? Yeah, I'm sure they could find somewhere in Squamish if they were prepared to pay for it.
Okay, thank you. Director Birch-Jones, go ahead.
That was my question when I read this. Is there really no opportunity for light industrial zoned land in Squamish? You know, according to the fellow's report himself, there isn't. And when I look at the map, it certainly doesn't look like agricultural land use in the surrounding properties. I agree we have to support the use of agricultural land, but frankly, this looks like a lot of the agricultural land use in Area B. And so there's a lot more pressure in the south. I think we have to hold to supporting the agricultural land, however, but I am sympathetic to this fellow.
I have Director Demare and then Director Rainbow.
Just curious, in Area D, are there any industrial lands? Because if there isn't any, is there opportunity to develop some by a developer?
I'll allow Director Needham to answer that, and then we'll go to Director Rainbow.
Through the chair, no, there's very little in the way of industrial zone land in the district of, in electoral area D. There really aren't plans currently to create any industrial land in electoral area D. I mean, those uses typically are focused in the member municipalities.
I personally think that I know a previous director, John Crishane, that was one of the things that he wanted to initiate in Goldbridge, in the Goldbridge area, was an industrial land for opportunities such as this. So it just a thought moving forward for Area D.
Director Rainbow, you had your hand up.
Well, yeah, just a question or a comment on the Upper Squamish Valley. I mean, we've spent, the community and various committees in the community have spent a lot of time and money in developing an agricultural plan. When you drive up the Upper Squamish right now, I agree it's treed, but it's classed as agricultural land, and the long-term goal is to develop agriculture in that area. And I don't want to see that whole farm area, sort of any of it, turned over to repairing equipment and so on and so forth. That should be happening. That should be in one of the municipalities. In this case, it should be in Squamish. I think if a guy has a farm established and he has equipment and a barn, then hiring somebody to come in and do the work on site, there's one with no regard whatsoever to agricultural use of that land. No intent now, no intent in the future. I'm really opposed to it.
Okay. So I think we had a move that. Yeah, we're moving that we are not supporting this moving forward to the ALC. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Demare. Further comments? Anyone opposed? Oh, Director Crompton, go ahead.
I'm just going to say the core, I mean, there's more to it, but I do think that one of the reasons that feels less compelling to me about not to support things going to the LC is that the LC may reject it. That's the LC's decision as to whether they reject it or not. I'm more interested in the other reasons that have been provided, that it's not the right use, it's not the right place, that kind of thing, because that's more compelling for me. So I just want to say I support the resolution, but I find the reasons why we shouldn't support it more compelling than what the LC might do with it. Because if we're really looking for what the LC might do with it, we should just give it to the LC to make that decision. Thank you.
Director Elliott?
I'll support the motion, but I think, you know, the next time we do look at OCPs for Area D or our regional growth strategy, light industrial or industrial land is something that we need to really be conscious of. So, you know, farm equipment needs to be repaired somewhere. So if we develop agricultural space, we also need to set aside some space where all that heavy equipment can get repaired. And forestry is still a big important industry in a lot of places through the region. So where do those trucks get repaired? And we are working our butts off down in Squamish to try and protect land and create new land. And some of that right now is hampered by the debris flow hazard off Inchikai, but we're hoping that that might free up some more industrial land to our north. But we have to take this into consideration. We become, especially in the South, bedroom communities if we can't service the industries that want to be here. They'll pack up and go elsewhere, and we lose good paying jobs and good folks in our communities. So I think we have to take a long-term view, and this probably won't be the last one we'll look at. So absolutely, I support agriculture, and there's a whole bunch of pieces attached to agriculture that go with it, not just the farmland.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 10.5, information report about the Mount Currie landslide monitoring update. Do we have staff joining us for this? Great, thank you. Welcome back, Barb, and thank you for letting us know that you're still here. Good afternoon, Ms. Morgan. Thank you for being here to talk to us about the Mount Currie landslide monitoring update.
Sure, thank you, Chair Ford. I think the report has most of it, but in summary, this is the UBCM CEPF grant of $100,000 that we received to undertake in partnership with Simon Fraser University a 2-year monitoring project of the Mount Currie to Sill identified landslide and rockfall hazard. BGC Engineering completed a risk assessment of this area and assessed that there is the potential for low frequency, high consequence, catastrophic consequence rockfall and landslide events from Mount Currie. And they also noted that there's uncertainty due to a lack of knowledge about rates of permafrost loss, presence and rates of loss of permafrost in key areas of Mount Currie where there are faults, which may quite dramatically affect that risk assessment. So that was out of scope of their study at the time. And this monitoring project, one of the things that we hope to learn from it is to confirm the presence of permafrost and to understand, even in this short time period, if there are any temperature changes that we should be aware of, and that will in part at the end of this project add to our advocacy to the province for continuing these kinds of monitoring projects. Beyond that, we're more generally looking at areas of interest to understand through monitoring, both fieldwork and equipment-based monitoring, how season to season that risk generally is changing in the identified areas. So the project got underway last year, and there were some delays in getting started due to COVID considerations. Our partner, Simon Fraser University, had some delays getting their field staff out last summer while they worked out good safety protocols for field staff. But they did get out in the field and make initial assessments, fly some aerial footage, and have given their findings in this report, which include the identification of 3 sites of note for the installation of monitoring equipment, which will happen later this spring or early summer when conditions permit, as those sites in particular have been identified as the potential sites for larger scale events.
Excellent. Any questions? Director Demare.
Just one comment. I think everybody's seen it on TV. The slide that happened up the coast a little ways, and it was due to the permafrost. And we saw the results in the video there, what happened. So yes, what's happening down with Mount Currie is so relevant.
Through you, Chair, I'd also note Joffrey Peak and the rather sudden collapse there as well.
Any other questions for Ms. Morgan? Okay, seeing none, I will ask someone to move receipt of the report, moved by Director Stoner, seconded by Director Demare. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much for being here. And strategic plan objectives midterm update. We're probably going to defer that to after tomorrow, or shall we move on to that now? CAO Helmer.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Morgan is here to join us for this report and the next couple reports after that as well. This is follow up on items that were part of the original plan and not the forward-looking piece. So this was a direction that this be reported out on.
Okay. Do you want to make a report there, Ms. Morgan?
Sure. So in terms of this report, nothing particularly additional to some of the things that were discussed in our session last week, but noting that these items around coordinating evacuation plans, having an initial consideration discussion about a recovery framework, and advocacy around forest fuels management to the province, and updates on future fire smart and fuel management work going forward, that these have been either achieved or partially achieved, and that there are next steps on the protective services work plan currently.
I saw a hand from Director Birch-Jones and then Director Demare.
Thank you for the report. It's very well done as usual. And I was particularly pleased to see that you managed to meet with Cascades and there's some progress on priority areas for fuel treatment in electoral be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
And Director Demare.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for the report. I've got a question on the community emergency plans. The ones for our area are still all in draft. So when do you expect them to be out of draft so we can share with the communities?
So these, yeah, through you, Chair, these reports have already been shared with the community representatives that we worked with at the time, and we encouraged them to share them more widely. They are also all available on our website. The thinking back in 2018 was to leave them in draft to indicate that they're evergreen documents, and that they are, rather than being something as a set point, that they're there for the community to update. And there are a number of communities who actually update that plan annually with an appendix, which is more internal to the community. And several of those are also sent to me for my additional review and feedback. So there are some communities that are very active in annually reviewing that plan, and other communities that we haven't heard from since 2018 that will be going back and reaching out to again this year.
Were there any in particular in Area A that you have to go back for feedback?
Not that I can think of. I would like to work more actively with each of the communities. I think each of the communities there in Area A have their own nuanced issues in terms of emergency management.
Okay, I look forward to that.
Thanks, Director.
Any other questions or comments from the board? No, seeing none. Okay, so could I have someone move receipt of the information? Moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Birch-Jones. Further discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 10.7 is the letter to UBCM emergency management consultation. Go ahead, Director Elliott.
I was just wondering, and I don't know who sits on that regularly, but if there's other municipalities or regional districts sending the same letter, because it seems like a really smart move.
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, this is a concerted campaign by a number of regional districts and municipalities. We have a staff group on an application called Flock, and it has a number of different subject channels that we all communicate on very actively, and this is one of the outcomes of that discussion, which we're raising up through our elected officials.
Thank you.
Any other questions about this letter? Seeing none. Oh, go ahead, Director Birch-Jones.
Oh, I was just going to make the motion to approve the sending of the letter to UBCM.
Thank you. Moved, seconded by Director Rainbow. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we are on the Feed the Need Food Bank campaign update. And go ahead, Ms. Morgan.
Through you, Chair, I think this is quite a happy item to report on, not the actual need that created this campaign, but the result of it. This was back in the early days of our COVID response, and food insecurity was quite quickly identified as a major need and one that would become a long-term issue for people economically affected by the consequential effects of the pandemic. And through some of the EOC resources that were available to us at the time, we used contract communication staff to create this Feed the Need campaign in close cooperation with the Sea to Sky Community Services. And the idea was that to highlight the need through various media channels and to encourage people to donate either to their local food bank or to a regional food bank pot of money that could be distributed as needed. And as it turns out, the Whistler and Squamish and Pemberton sites each have their own online presence. So we were able to connect directly from the Sea to Sky Community Services to their donation portals. And Lillawitt did not have an online presence, so we hoped that they would benefit from this regional option. The regional bucket, if you like, has so far collected a little over $7,000. And when we were considering how those funds should be distributed, we solicited feedback from each of the food bank managers, boards, and Lillawitt reported back that they have seen over 400% increase. And notably also that Lillawitt, that the Friendship Centre Society does not only operate the food bank. They run a soup kitchen and a number of other auxiliary facilities, and also noting that they've been pretty instrumental in facilitating the connection between the transport company and the supermarket, who's been providing a service out into electoral area B, and I think electoral area A, perhaps to a certain extent as well, so that people, particularly people in a more vulnerable age bracket, don't have to actually come into Lillawitt to shop. So it's quite wide-ranging, the services that they offer, but it was certainly a notable increase in their need. And so between Chair Ford, the Director of Sea to Sky Community Services, and myself, who were the designated committee, unanimously voted to distribute those funds to the Lillawitt Food Bank.
Thank you. Director Demare, go ahead.
Geez, I'm talkative today. Lillawitt Friendship Center is amazing. I follow them on Facebook now, and they list out what they've got for lunch for people to go to. They're just incredible what they do for the whole community, including Area A, Lillawitt, and Area B. They're tremendous. I can't say enough about them.
Thank you. Director Birch-Jones.
Just echo Director Demare's comments, and I'm really appreciative of all the extra support that came through, and it really mattered. It really made a difference. I'd like to move the two that's, that we approve staff time to provide grant money. Sorry, I jumped ahead. Just thank you for the report and the excellent work.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Morgan, for your caring and compassion through this process. It's been very, very much appreciated by our whole region, and we are lucky to have you. All right. Thank you. This is, sorry, I keep losing my place. This is an information report moved by Director Demers, seconded by Director Birch-Jones. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And we are now on to mapping Crown land leases in the SLRD. Go ahead, Ms. Morgan.
Yeah, so this one has been a while in the baking. It came up in 2018, I think, as on the follow-up action list for protective services, and arose out of the emergency response to the Grouse Creek fire in sort of between electoral areas B and C. At that time, we discovered that there were a number of people that we weren't really aware of who had structures of various kinds on ex-Crown lease or Crown lease properties. And when we created our evacuation order and the maps, these parcels didn't show up. So we found out about some of these people, and they found out about the evacuation order rather unfortunately third hand rather than first hand from us. So it really highlighted a gap in our GIS data sets. And at the time, the resolution was around hiring a consultant to do a review of this. And it went a little on the back burner of the work plan, I have to say. But then when we got a little more resource with our emergency management technician, he has been liaising with the local Flynrod office, and has actually, after quite a bit of negotiation and backward and forth and establishing just what we need, they've actually provided us with that data file. So we now have that layer in our GIS system and available to our GIS tech, and we should have that data gap addressed for future emergency response.
That's great news. Thank you very much. There's that regional collaboration that we've been striving for, so that's fantastic. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Seeing none, could I have someone move receipt of the information? Moved by Director Crompton, seconded by Director Demers. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. I'm going to take a quick pause here. It is 12:18. We do not have a delegation for 1 o'clock, so we're not pressed at this time by any specific timing. Is anybody desperate for a lunch break at this time, or shall we press on through a few more items? I'm getting kind of hungry, so let's take a break.
Yeah, I was just going to translate your comments, Jen. I thought that's what
You're
it said.
frozen.
I vote for lunch now.
Okay. We're going to take a break. Let's come back at 10 minutes to 1. Does that work for everybody? We've got a half an hour for break, and we'll come back at 12:50.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Kristen, the live stream just carries on. Cool.
It does, yes.
Super.
Thanks.
Sorry, what's the break length?
Until 12:50, 30 minutes, 31 minutes.
Okay, I might be a bit late. I have to do agenda planning from 12:30 to 1.
Oh, sorry. Does that
That's
give
okay.
you enough time for lunch?
No, I don't usually get to eat. So, okay.
Well, come back when you can. We'll have
Okay.
quorum. It's all good. Thank you.
Hey, Jen, how you doing?
Oh, good. My phone went crazy. It was like one person sent a group text and then everyone responded all at once. So my phone was just vibrating off the table. I thought it was like an emergency alert. It was very distracting.
Ladies, just a reminder, we're still live streaming.
Totally, yeah. I
Yeah.
was just going to say anytime, I was tempted to say, Chair Ford, we're on 10.2. Seemed, because I have the paper agenda in front of me. I do waste some paper printing these things, but it does help me. And I wondered, I heard you say, print the agenda.
I need to print it. Well, I was printing it and I wasn't using it. And so then I've got two screens going. I've got the package on one and I've got the agenda on the other. So I should be fine. It was more the emergency alert of no emergency at all that threw me off.
Got it. Yeah. Well, I think it's going really well.
The sun has come out and it looks beautiful out my window here. One minute until we come back together for anyone listening but not on their screen. Hello, Jack. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. You.
Okay. I think we've got Jenna. Wonderful. Thank you. And we're not waiting for Karen. Hi, Mike. Thank you. Okay, we will begin 12:51. We are on 10.10. We're talking about the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for an emergency support services stream for up to $50,000. And Ms. Morgan, are you going to speak to this?
Yes, I note Kristen with her hand up.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to see if Director Rainbow has rejoined us. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so for this one, have high hopes for this one in terms of an initiative. If we can get this funding, it is a proposed partnership with the District of Lillooet and with the intention to invite all of the surrounding First Nations of the Lillawitt Tribal Council in that area as well to participate in a joint full-scale ESS exercise. And the hoped for outcomes of this is to build that ESS team. Part of it is to do some public outreach and recruiting for that team, which is currently a small but mighty team. And if we can attract some additional volunteers to it, that would be excellent, to generally raise the profile of that team and what it does. And as always, to encourage people in terms of their overall emergency preparedness. It's also an opportunity, we're scheduling this for February 2022. So hopefully we're all back to in-person communications with each other by then, and have the opportunity to practice reception centre setup and also group lodging setup, so that volunteers and district and Slrd staff have an opportunity to really see the time it takes and the resources that it takes to set up that kind of emergency support services response in an emergency. And it's an opportunity to have a lot of observers as well in that kind of full-scale exercise, and to do pre-training for anybody who might wish it. So again, that's not limited to District of Lillooet ESS staff and teams or our own, but also to those First Nations in the local area as well. So hoping for some extended benefits, some profile raising, and some good cooperation on this one.
Excellent, thank you. I have Director Demare, then Director Birch-Jones.
Thank you, Sarah. Excellent work. I'm just curious, if we had a major event in Area A and we had to get evacuated out to Lillawitt, is Area A going to be able to participate in this training and process?
Through you, Chair, Director Demare, that's an interesting question. And I would have previously said that it's a challenge to have ESS volunteers far from the actual municipal centre. But now that we're also conversant with Zoom and other online platforms, I think there's a lot more scope to have, like ancillary team members from further away. So I think we could extend that invitation for additional volunteers out further than we would traditionally think about recruiting.
Yeah, I'm specifically looking at our two fire services that we have here.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah,
they would help with the evacuation and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. There's typically not a great deal of crossover between firefighter members and emergency support services members, but volunteer firefighter members are absolutely a critical part of the evacuation notification process.
Okay, thank you.
Just following on that question, search and rescue organizations in the area would also be included?
So this exercise is looking at the part of the process from people already evacuating and turning up for registration and referral to the services that they need. And if there is no commercial accommodation available, they don't have friends and family to stay with, then looking at that scenario of setting up cots and blankets in a group lodging facility like a gym. So that's a whole piece in and of itself. And that's what we want to focus on in this particular exercise.
Okay, Director Birch-Jones.
I was really pleased to see that, and taking into consideration some of the comments. I'm sure that the exercise will be as broad as is practical, but I would like to move the 3 that's, and I've been so impressed with the teamwork that already exists. Like Sarah said, small but mighty. I really like that. All the bands are participating with Darren and Sarah, and that is such an important strength, and this would support that and build on it. So I'd like to move the 3 that's, please.
Okay, moved by Director Birch-Jones, seconded by Director Demare. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Oh, go ahead, Director Wiebe.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself.
No worries.
I don't know if it's of interest or input here, only, but from talking with Fire Chief Oiki, all these exercises we do, and we include our First Nations communities and everything. And as soon as the pandemic hit and there was an outbreak, they each go back to their old ways. So yeah, of just being in their own community type of thing. So it's just was an interesting conversation that we had, and I'm pretty sure he'll probably bring it into some of these things that you are doing. It's a great initiative. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Any other comments? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. So that's the 3 that's for 10.10. Ms. Morgan, are you staying for this one?
Yes, indeed.
It feels like your area. 10.11 is the annual review of our board policy regarding workplace bullying and harassment policy and procedures. No.
No, sorry, not the one I was expecting.
No, you're going ahead to 12 for the BC Rural Center. Okay. So this one's a fairly simple one. We haven't had the review. Go ahead, Director Rainbow.
Oh, I wanted to move it.
You're going to move it. So we're moving it, seconded by Director Birch-Jones. Any questions or comments regarding this? Seeing none. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we're on to 10.12, rescinding the board appointments to the BC Rural Center. Moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Birch-Jones. Any questions? Go ahead, Director Stoner. No, just moving it. Okay. Question, Director Birch-Jones.
I just have in my note that this would be an obvious candidate for Northern Development Initiative Trust, if that makes sense.
The way I read the report, and correct me if I'm wrong, CEO Helmer, was that they're changing their governance structure and so that they'll be looking for candidates in the future. Is that correct?
Thank you, Chair. They have already made a change to their governance structure. And so they've broadened their mandate to encompass all of rural BC, but it's no longer by appointment. So that's why we're recommending that be rescinded.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions regarding this? Go ahead, Director Rainbow.
So does that mean that anybody on our board could volunteer if they wish to? So if Director Demare and Director Birch-Jones wanted to continue with that group, they could just volunteer and be part of it? Is that what that means?
CEO Helmer?
Through the chair, yes, thank you. They could reach out to that group, and if there are opportunities that would exist, then they could be considered for those opportunities.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else with questions or comments? Okay, and anyone opposed? Motion carries. So we are rescinding our appointments. Thank you. 10.13, the 2021 assessments non-market change review. Go ahead, sorry, CAO Helmer.
Thank you, Chair. So Ms. LaFrance is not here to speak to it. She was hoping to have that report available so you could get it as soon as possible, but it is not yet complete, so it'll be coming forward in February for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move along to 10.14, and that is Garibaldi at Squamish EAO decision extension and amendment granted, and I see Director Needham is here.
Do we need to move anything for that 10.13?
I guess we should have probably amended the agenda at the beginning to remove it. Or we're just gonna defer it to the next meeting.
I'll move deferment.
Yeah, we could defer it.
Okay, move defer from Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Stoner. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And Director Needham, Garibaldi at Squamish. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to pass this along to Ms. Dewar as this is her file.
Excellent, thank you. Through the chair, I'm happy to speak to the report, or I'm also happy just to answer any questions the board may have.
Any, let's hear a brief from you because I know you're prepared on this. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So the purpose of this information report is really just to inform the board about the Chief Executive Assessment Officer orders regarding the Garibaldi at Squamish extension and amendment applications, which the board did provide a referral response back in November. And so in January 15th, 2021, the Chief Executive Assessment Officer of the EAO granted a one-time 5-year extension and amendment number 2 to the Garibaldi at Squamish Inc. for their Garibaldi at Squamish project. Really the order here is basically just saying that they have extended the certificate date to January 26, 2026. I think, I'll remind the board of the referral response and the resolution that was provided back in November of 2020, where the board resolved that in its response to the Environmental Assessment Office regarding the Garibaldi at Squamish Environmental Assessment Certificate and Extension and Amendment applications, staff include comments that the local government process involves the proponent submitting an official community plan amendment application, which in this case would trigger a regional growth strategy amendment process. So although, the EAO has granted the extension for this project, the 5-year extension, I think it is important for us to note that the referral responses from the local governments were really taken into account in at least the report that was written that the EAO made their decision, and they have really highlighted that a major RGS amendment is required. So that's the first time this has really been sort of recognized. So I think that we can see as positive, and they have, clearly stated that there are inconsistencies with the RGS and that there are required local government processes that the proponent would need to go through, as they move through the certificate process, and then also the process with the Mountain Resorts branch. I will just read out one specific piece because I think it does directly tie into the referral response the board provided, and it speaks to this jurisdiction and authorizations piece. So this is a quote: "The District of Squamish, SLRD, and RMOW expressed opposition to the EAO issuing the extension given their overall concern identified with respect to gas in the EA and inconsistency with local planning processes, including local government jurisdiction. As Garibaldi was advised in 2007, the creation of a mountain resort municipality would not be permitted. Gas may either be situated wholly within District of Squamish or remain within the SLRD, though not as a separate resort municipality. Whichever jurisdiction would retain jurisdiction over gas would have significant input into the final design, including aspects such as services, taxation, sediment layout, et cetera, which would take place through an OCP process and other sort of applicable bylaws that would be amended at that time." And then the also point that's highlighted speaks to the regional growth strategy. The RGS is an SLRD bylaw, which is used to guide local government OCPs and bylaws regarding future growth in the SLRD. As gas is currently inconsistent with the SLRD RGS and the DOS's regional context statement bylaw, a major RGS amendment process would be initiated by the SLRD under provisions in the Local Government Act and would require unanimous agreement from all member municipalities and adjacent regional districts, including the RMOW. So I think I'll just leave it there, and happy to get into any other further details the board might have questions on or need further information on. But I think really we can feel, I think it is positive that the Environmental Assessment Office has really highlighted that RGS piece that the proponent hadn't really been acknowledging up until this point. So that's been clearly stated in their reasons for their decision, which I think is positive given the responses provided by the Slrd, District Squamish, and RMOW to this extension request.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your work on this. Are there comments or questions? Director Stoner, go ahead.
Yeah, not a question. I wouldn't say that I'm surprised that the extension was granted, but I do think that the text that was provided in the justification is very, very helpful, highlighting both the requirement for the RGS, recognition of the local jurisdiction, and I think it helps at least lay out a little bit more clearly what that process is, which I know is something that we've struggled with both at the district and at the regional district. So was very happy to see that language in there. And thank staff for their time on this file.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Director Rainbow, go ahead.
I just wonder how we intend ourselves to proceed. Up until now, gas has been consistently going to the District of Squamish and ignoring the SLRD. And they've had meetings with council, and it seems to me that they're playing that waiting game and hoping that eventually the District of Squamish is going to extend its boundaries, and then they will just be dealing with that municipality. That's what that's the mindset they seem to have, because they just totally ignore the SLRD. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't have a sort of an agreement of how we might deal with them in the future. If they, for example, if they go back to the District of Squamish, would it be helpful if the district said to them, listen, you need to go to the SLRD as well, not just focus on us. They're not going to go away. They will be back, and I'll be surprised if it wouldn't surprise me, I was going to say, if we didn't get lawyers, or if they didn't get lawyers involved, because I know that they totally disagree with how we change the regional growth strategy. I don't think they've got a case, but that's how they feel about it. So I'm just wondering if we shouldn't have either a committee of staff or a committee of councillors, SLRD directors, to just look this over and have make sure we get our messaging right, if nothing else.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Director Crompton and then Director Elliott.
I think the response from the EA gives it clarity that they need to come through the regional district, and I think that's good. And I'm not so sure we need to do much. That, to me, it answers the questions clearly. If they want to proceed, they need to come and talk to us. And if they want to talk to us, I'm sure that Ms. Dewar and Ms. Needham will be happy to do so when they decide that that's a decision that they want to make. So my preference is to ensure that we're up to date on everything, but let them knock on our door.
Thank you. Director Elliott.
I'm in agreement with Director Crompton. Thank you for putting it so succinctly.
Excellent. Okay, any other comments? Appreciate that. Can I have someone move receipt of the information? Moved by Director Crompton, seconded by Director Stoner. Final comments? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both for being here and for your excellent work on this file. All right. We are now at 11.1. Chair's verbal report, board roundtable. Where shall we start today? I am going to start with Area D. Director Rainbow.
Well, there are, am I on mute? No, maybe I should go on to mute. What are matters of interest in Area D next to the highway where anybody with a drill can go in and steal everybody's identity? Why isn't there a roof there over the mailboxes protecting people from the rain? You wouldn't believe how much traffic I've had on that. On a more serious note, you probably recall that they live on land that is leased from the provincial government. In their agreements, it talks about their lease payments being rent. So some of them have seen they're around $2,000 a year. To one of them is up to $20,000 a year. As you can imagine, there's a great degree of consternation about that. So that's something which likely will be demanding some staff time in the future. An unfair practice. Jordan Slrd is working on it with me, and we're trying to get some shift, so far unsuccessfully. Other than that, Area D is as it always is, warm and the most agreeable place in the regional district in terms of climate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, let's go to Squamish.
I was just texting Director Stoner. I'm like, you do it. She's writing me back. Nope. So I'm doing it. Thank you. So lots going on. We are now, we did our budget public engagement last night, which was great. We had a few people there. And so hoping to bring that bylaw back at the end of February for approval. We're getting close to having our first neighborhood plan approved. So taking our major neighborhoods and working with the community to figure out what it will look like in the future and how it will develop. We have lots of pressure in several of our neighborhoods from development interests. So trying to hold off on any rezonings in those neighborhoods until we can create a plan. So we learned a lot from the first one. Hope to be giving that second reading in the next few weeks. It'll go to public hearing. So that's been a lot to wrap our heads around, but also really wonderful to start thinking about how our community evolves at a neighborhood by neighborhood level. We seem to be putting in lots of grant applications around the new infrastructure funding that's been made available by the federal and provincial governments, which is fantastic. So most of that is towards active transportation projects, as well as our flood management. And then I know that we provided a letter of support, as did Squamish Nation, for Davin Peterson at Base Technology to apply for funding to bring broadband to the upper Squamish Valley and upper Paradise Valley. So that is great for our SLRD residents up that way, which is exciting. So I'm hoping that he'll be successful. What else? I think as of February 1st, our overdose prevention site will be open, which can't come too soon. We had an overdose death last week. Longtime Squamish member, which was really devastating for all of us, especially the folks at Under One Roof, who have been working so hard to keep people safe now that they're all housed. And yeah, I don't know. Unless Councillor Stoner or Director Stoner can think of anything else that I missed compelling. The agendas are full and the meetings are long.
Although I feel like they've been more manageable in January than in the past. So.
Well, I know our connection to the waterfront is growing. So in 2021, we'll see the start of the Oceanfront Park as part of that major development. The waterfront park at Waterfront Landing, which is on the Memcombe Blind Channel, that will start this year. We've broken ground and started building our Buckley Avenue affordable housing project, and that has a new park connected to it, as well as the Foundry and the new youth center. So yeah, by the end of this term, there'll be some beautiful new green spaces in our community, and especially the ones connected to the water, which we really haven't had so far. So I'm excited to start to see those evolve. And you're all welcome to come down and walk the waterfront with us when they're done. Thank you.
Once the order has lifted and we can yet again travel to other communities. Director Crompton for Whistler.
Thank you. Two things I want to talk about. The first is that, oh, I can't even talk about it. We had a public hearing. There you go. End of story. There you go. The other thing I want to talk about is that we've had a really troubling spike in the cases of COVID-19 in our community in the last 2 weeks. And the challenge is that I don't need to tell you anything. You've been experiencing this for the last 10 months, but the most challenging thing I think is that it moves in such insidious ways. It moves between people that know each other the best, trust each other the most, need to be together the most. And the request that we're making of people is to restrain their interaction with the people they love and care about more than anything else. And that's a really hard ask. And for the last 10 months, we've been sharing a high degree of urgency around it. Right now, I find the request for urgency when we've been talking about urgency for 10 months a tough thing to engage with. We had a community Zoom call with people with our medical health officer, John Harding, with a number of our doctors, with the head of the Chamber of Commerce, the head of Tourism Whistler, all of council, our MP, our MLA, everyone showed up, and we had a discussion about what we need to do as a community in response. And the challenge is that what we need to do is what we've been asked to do for 10 months. And that's such a tough thing to engage with. So whenever I'm speaking to our community in the last couple of weeks, the message is do more of what you've been doing, commit to it deeper. And I found that challenging, but certainly our numbers are escalating. And I tell you, I look to the Lillawitt for inspiration on this. Like, they knocked this down and beat it. And that's so inspiring to me. And I know that our community can do the same. And so want to share that kind of urgency. I think Chief Nelson did such a good job of just staying on top of, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And so I'm inspired by that. One sort of fun, neat, interesting thing that we've done, and you can check it out, is a land acknowledgement video that we had a number of community members participate in, that talks about being on Lillawitt and Squamish unceded territory. And we had, and I just want you all to know, I'm in the same video with Trevor Linden, which is pretty exciting for me. But it's neat to have that opportunity. And if you have a chance, please read Heather Paul's blog about land acknowledgements. It's really, really good. Heather is the executive director of the Squamish-Lillooet Cultural Center, and she wrote a great blog to sort of sit alongside the land acknowledgement video to talk about land acknowledgements, which I thought was great.
I am sure Chair Ford can add to my comments, but she will not be talking about that public hearing.
I will not. But I was hoping that perhaps that land acknowledgement piece could be our regional moment tomorrow. Because it is a tall order to match what Pemberton offered us last month. So it's worth a shot. The only thing that I have to add from Whistler and from the Whistler Housing Authority, I am excited, is we have 45 new homes opening March 1st, which no one has ever said this before. The project is ahead of schedule by many months and under budget. So I'm pretty excited about that. That's all I have to add. It's been a busy month and it's been crazy. And let's move on to Area C. Director Mack.
An issue that I've been getting lots of comments on in Area C, and I'm sure it goes all the way down through the corridor, is since Miller Cap took over our road maintenance, they've been using a lot of salt brine on the roads. Just hang on a second. Sorry about that. But anyways, yeah, I've been having complaints from some of the automotive repair shops, and even a couple of the places in Squamish that do automotive repairs have noticed the amount of wiring damage that's being done. So people are having to replace wiring harnesses and such, which is very expensive. And I've talked to our MLA about it. He's going to bring it up with highways. What is the reason for this? Cost saving, more expedient, whatever. But I think everybody should be just checking with people in their communities. It's really bad driving between Pemberton and Whistler and Squamish and back and forth. Now they're doing it up to Darcy and up the Meadows constantly. I've talked to them and they seem to think it's all fine, but this rusts the vehicle out in about 2 years because it gets into everything. So I think it's something really important. I worry about the environment if this stuff is so, if it'll rust a car out in a short period of time, what's it doing to our waterways? But anyways, that's everything else in Area C is just moving along. People are spending a lot of time, at home, laying low sort of thing. I know Darcy's pretty quiet, Birken's pretty quiet, but we'll just hope for the best and hope the vaccines start showing up. Thanks.
Thank you. Pemberton.
Thanks. Just a quick follow-up to that. Director Mack, you're talking about the application, the stuff that leaves the lines down the middle of the lane, right? That they put
exactly
prior to. I've been wanting to, I actually have it in my notes for my staff, but I would love to know the environmental impact of that stuff because they're laying it under conditions I don't think really need to be laid. And I don't know how much that stuff washes into the groundwater compared to the other treatments they use. So I would definitely like to find out a little bit more because, yeah, I've never seen that before. So I don't know if we want to follow up here or you want to wait for MLA Slrd or
yeah.
Staff has
So MLA Slrd is following up with the ministry, and he's going to find out, what the reasoning and all that stuff is. But yeah, I definitely have concerns. So anyways, I'll definitely keep you up to date on what I hear.
Thanks. I'll pick up a little bit where Director Crompton was going. You know, here in Pemberton, we've definitely had cases, but not a ton. Lillawitt, as Director Crompton said, did a great job suppressing transmission when it started to break into their community. Whistler is seeing a spike. Some of that spike is making its way into Pemberton. We have lots of community members who work in Whistler. So inevitably it's made its way up north here. And I would say, just on a high level, you know, our community's responded very well. I think people followed the directions very well and the recommendations for the most part. I do feel that there was a bit of a bubble, not mentality, but illusion starting to form because we hadn't seen too much close to home. And now with the spike in Whistler and coming up the highway, you know, just on the lunch break, I was responding to a couple of residents asking the same questions we've heard as elected leaders since March, which is, can we get more numbers? Can we understand how many numbers are in our community? There's still confusion. You know, Lillawitt had those daily numbers. I don't get those daily numbers. So, you know, there's expectations from members of our community to get the same sort of reporting. I'm not sure why it's different, but we don't get that level of breakdown. We get the VCH breakdown, and then there's the BCDC breakdown for the corridor. But yeah, it's got people a little bit spooked again here, similar to what Jack was describing in Whistler. So the bubbles burst a little bit, and I totally agree with his comments. It's hard to keep conveying the same message. You know, the days are longer, the sun's coming out a little bit. You see on the news that the numbers flatten a little bit, and it's you know, the one thing I keep coming back to was that sort of metaphor that I heard last year or in the spring, which was, you know, you don't take your parachute off 100 feet before you hit the ground. You got to keep your parachute on all the way through, and we got to keep it on, and we got to keep protecting. So yeah, tough. A couple other Pemberton highlight notes, lowlight notes. As you probably heard, the Scotiabank branch, our only real bank, we have a Blue Shore as well, but that kind of branch is closing. There were protests. We all wrote letters. Council wrote a letter. I had what I would define as a fruitless conversation with the VP of Operations from Scotiabank. Didn't seem to come to the call with any open mind to reconsider, despite what I would say, the challenges that leave so many of the members, you know, especially the more remote members of our communities and Lillawitt members, as well as the lack of business sense in the light of Pemberton experiencing its greatest growth ever. It seems like there's a lot of mortgages they're going to miss out on there, but there didn't seem to be a lot of willingness. We're still sort of pounding on the door, but it wasn't a great call. We have started some of our outreach towards our OCP, and we started with what we feel is one of the highest needs, just like yourselves, which is housing. So we had a affordable housing forum last night. Unfortunately, I was working, so I am yet to catch up on it and watch it. And there's a survey that's open for about a month, I believe, or 3 weeks following that forum. So hopefully we'll get lots of input. You know, also on the lunch break, I was responding to emails. We have seen, you know, when we listen to each other talk about our housing needs, we've been fortunate in that the needs on the supportive housing part of the spectrum have been here, but not massive. Now that is starting to exceed what services are being able to be provided for vulnerable and hard to house. And so those needs are unfortunately starting to increase in Pemberton too. So I have some meetings set up to see how we can address that. We put in our affordable housing application to BC Housing in partnership with Sea Sky Community Services. That was put in on the 11th of January. So we have big fingers crossed on that. You know, other than that, we're deep in budget as well, and you know, lots of activity going on at Town Hall, lots of staff transfers, so lots going on. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. Let's go up to Director Wiebe.
I'm so used to following Director Birch Jones, and I could just say ditto. We had a COVID outbreak here in the Indigenous communities. It started with 9 cases. They initiated having daily meetings to keep us updated. And as of right now, there are no cases and no contact. Everybody's free and clear as far as I know. We haven't had any meetings in about 5 days. Sitting in on those meetings, it amazed me to kind of refer back to what everybody else is saying about it. The First Nations Health Authority has different guidelines and they can release so much more information than Interior Health. It's really, really frustrating. I don't know what we can do about it. It all revolves around what they call privacy issues, which to me, knowing how many cases you have in your area really doesn't affect names, phone numbers, and addresses, but I guess that's something they'll have to deal with in their own health authority as far as the communications go. Let's see what else. The district received grant funding to get on with a needs assessment for affordable housing. We just got notification of that late last week, so that's on the move. We've been carrying on with our OCP. Had a couple of strategic planning meetings. One was last night, and we actually met in the mezzanine of the recreation center, totally masked up and social distance, but it was nice to see everybody, and it just gave it a different feeling. And our CAO did a little exercise with us, and it was unique in how council thinks and how staff thinks of the importances along, they're still saying, the OCP and this, that, and the other, and council's thinking, well, we dealt with the OCP, that's done. But so it was a real eye opener for a few of us, I think. I would like to shadow some staff around when it comes time, and not because I don't think they're doing their jobs. I think they have way more work on their plates than what mayor and council realize. So yeah, that was interesting. Tomorrow we go into our first budget meeting, and I'm really not looking forward to that. And that's basically what's going on in Lillooet. The sun's just come out here this afternoon, and yeah, the weather's great. It's way better than Winnipeg.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Director Bridge-Jones, go ahead.
Thank you. Not only is it better than Winnipeg, but it is superior to Area D. Just saying. Since I have the floor. Barb, I had a real bird's eye view on some of the leadership COVID management meetings. I'm very still connected to some of the folks in that community, and I can tell you the difference. The First Nations Health Authority nurses, first of all, they were extremely well resourced. I think we did get up to 12 cases at one point. Now it's 0, by the way, on reserve. The First Nations Health Authority nurses asked every single client that they tested for permission to share their information if it was a positive test, for their statistics, for sharing with the chief and council, and in order to be able to offer those positive people support in maintaining isolation. So that's one significant difference, and they were extremely well resourced, and they responded, I think, extremely well, including offering clinics on all of our 6, well, they've done 5, I'm not sure if they've done the 6, but they also had clinics at the recreation center where some of the off-reserve clients and families they did do a good job with that. And I'm happy to say some of the frontline healthcare workers also received vaccinations. So we are, as a community, a little bit ahead in the vaccination process for now. I'm a little bit skeptical about the second dose and how long we're going to have to wait to see that being rolled out, but we shall see. They certainly did knock it down, though. Well done. And that was just through the leadership, I would say, on the bands with very good support from FNHA. The grant writer that we have that we're sharing between A and B is such a joy. Good things are happening. There's good applications in the works. Lots of them are failing, but it's work in progress, and we're going to be just that much stronger the next time around. And I can't say enough about how happy we are with that program. And that's all NDIT. And I'm really grateful that Melanie has experience with NDIT and that we're applying for an intern. We've sort of finally been able to crack that, that fund, and we received funding for the feasibility study, the Statlium Cultural Center, as well as the Japanese Memorial Garden. And wasn't there another one, Barb? There was a third fund. Cultural Center, the Memorial Garden. Anyway, we did better. And the facade improvement program in A and B. I can see you grinning at me, Sal. So that's pretty cool. And the work that's going on up at Big Bar, which I realize is in the Thompson Regional District, but it is incredibly important for the entire province and certainly all of Area B. They are pouring massive money. The construction up there is just unbelievable. It's Kiewit and Sons, and they are building their office site. They've done the archaeology work, and I thought, how did they get that done so fast when we can't get the archaeology study done at Seton Park, which has been on the books for certainly over a decade. But anyway, they are building a permanent fishways. So when the fish come back, the small numbers as they are, they may have a better chance of getting by there. Yeah. I'll stop right there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Area A.
Yeah, we just got notice today that our grant writer application to NDIT got approved. So we're good for another year with that program. And both Vivian and I are going to supplement that program even more at their next EAD meeting. But yeah, so very quiet in the valley. It's just very quiet at this time of year. Gun Lake is just starting to freeze over now. It should be frozen over in a couple more days, which is quite late for this year. But all the other lakes are frozen over. From the minister meetings with Flynn Road, with regards to the Hurley FSR, as mentioned before, we got probably $200,000 worth of funding that they finally almost completed. It started to snow, so the resurfacing project didn't get completed, but the brushing and ditching was complete. I also asked for vehicle counts for the last 10 years, and they finally showed up. And lo and behold, as anticipated, 2020 just blew all the other numbers away. So they've come back, and they only ever had one camera on the Hurley. They're going to be placing six cameras this year, and in specific areas to see where all that traffic is going. Because a lot of the traffic only went up to the summit where the semaphore lakes are. And and also they realize that they're going to have to do more maintenance. Since I got that notice, we're planning the meeting in late February with them, and I've asked our MLA, Jackie Taggart, to be part of that meeting. But since that, the Auditor General came out with their report on FSRs, and I think everybody's seen that now, where they've been underfunded, not performing the program like they should have been doing, and so on and so forth. So I'll be using that report when we finally do meet with Flynn Road, with the Cascades Forest District. And so that's, to me, it's positive that they finally realize that they need to do a better job on that early. It affects our tourism industry, and all the travelers that use that road. On the roads context, we're going to be starting the Jackie Taggart's quarterly MODI meetings with the regional district manager for our area, and that's with District of Lillawitt. Looks like Barb's going to be on it, Vivian and myself, and I've also asked for a First Nations representative to be on that little committee. And I've asked for very specifics, very similar to what I did with the vehicle count for the FSR. I've asked for vehicle counts for all the main roads leading in and out of Lillawitt, including Road 40, Mission Mountain Road, Duffy, and the road up to Hat Creek, and Highway 12 down to Lytton. So we get the vehicle counts for it, the RCMP reports on vehicle incidents that they go to, ICBC claims report for all those roads, and Dawson Road Maintenance comment forms on their online comment form, and also if any phone calls that they have to report back to MODI. So we got a response yesterday from Jackie Taggart's office that they'll be working on getting out all information and planning the meeting in late fall, or late February. So looking forward to those meetings. Again, it's hard to have a meeting if you don't have data to talk to. So yeah, I'm very impressed with that. On a positive note, our Goldbridge Hotel, of course, they're only open part-time, similar to the Braylor pub. They're offering a full Chinese menu now, just started this week. And wow, for our little community, and they actually deliver in Goldbridge on top of it. So yeah, that's all for our area.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's move along to 11.2, Director Rainbow's request for an expense to be approved. Could I have someone move that? Moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Wiebe. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Director Birch-Jones. Oh, no. You gotta unmute.
So I was probably unmuted that whole time. Apologies. Luckily, the dog is not here. I was reminded that I took a couple of requests to CAO Flynn. One was for some advertising for some sessions I offered as the newly acclaimed Area B Director. No, that's not an expense. Try taking it out of Select if you want. I wasn't too happy with that. I also asked for reimbursement for something that I attended in Kamloops, and the response was, no, that's what you get a salary for as a director. And I was reminded of those things because what I thought was I should definitely get approval for these expenses beforehand. And so I just offer that comment.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Director Elliott, go ahead.
Do we have a policy around director training? And is this following it? For budget line items, so it's first time as a director I've seen this sort of request, so I'm just kind of curious to fill in my knowledge gap.
CAO Helmer.
Thank you, Chair. So we do have a policy around expense claims, and it says that if something is more than 6 months old, even if it's something that you're allowed to do, that it would have to go to the board, because all expense claims are supposed to be submitted within that 6-month time frame. So this was something that occurred almost a year ago, and that's why it's coming to the board at this time. I'm not sure what happened with the original when that training was booked.
I think the question is this an eligible expense as a director's expense account? Like, is training included in one of the, or does it fit the conference budget, or is this an eligible training expense?
Kristen's just reaching for that policy. I can hear her.
I thought that it was. The reason you're seeing it here today is because I forgot to put it on my claim, my expense claim in April. So you may never have seen it if it had gone through at that time. If you consider that it's not an eligible expense, then don't pay it.
Go ahead, Director Elliott.
I assumed it was eligible because it was on the agenda. I was just wondering why it was the first time I was seeing something like this, but CEO Helmer answered my question, which is it's more than 6 months old. But I'm assuming that if it wasn't an eligible expense, we wouldn't be seeing it for approval. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, so I received that from staff as being otherwise eligible if it had arrived within the timeline, but I wasn't sure what the history was of what had occurred in April that made it eligible as to what consideration was given to that particular item back at that time. What I can do, if this is of interest to the board, is
Sorry, I have CAO Helmer and then Director Mack.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I was just going to suggest that what I could do is bring the policy back to the board and review it in more detail myself and bring it back to the board. It is part of the orientation manual, I know that, but given that one director had an item that was beyond the policy, and given that there's a lot of discussion going on, that might be a good thing to do. So it's a good refresher for everybody on what it contains in a bit more detail, if that would be desirable.
Director Mack, go ahead.
I just move that we pay this expense and get on with it.
Okay, we did have a mover and seconder for the motion. I wanted to bring it to the discussion. Any other comments or questions? Director Demare, go ahead.
I think training, and like I mentioned at one of our last meetings about public safety, I think they both need to get reviewed and make sure that we have systems in place so we can do this kind of stuff for public safety and for training for the electoral area directors.
Okay. So we have two things. We have a motion as laid out in the package, but we also have an offer from the CAO to bring the policy back for review. She'll review it and then bring a further explanation to a future meeting. So go ahead, Kristen.
Thanks, Chair. So I've just looked at this really quickly, and it looks like it says directors are automatically entitled to reimbursement of eligible expenses associated with the attendance at the following meetings, and that includes a list. And so it appears for me on my very quick read, refreshing my memory, that this would be allowed because it's not on the list of eligible expenses. Nothing would stop a director from bringing it for permission to to have that covered. And then just to the second point, this was flagged by the finance department because as the CAO was saying, the CAO is only delegated authority to approve expenses within the last 6 months. So it has been our practice when that deadline is missed by directors, it's happened. They simply have to come to the board because the CAO has no authority to approve them.
Okay, so in the interest of, we have the motion on the floor to approve this expense. I'm going to call the question. Is there anyone opposed to approving this expense? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. Is that satisfactory?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, 11.3 Area D and District of Squamish Ag Plan PILT funds. Could I have someone? Oh, I think we're going to get. Satisfactory.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I hear feedback from one of you, but that's okay. Are you here to speak to 11.3? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you. Through the chair. I guess I'm just here to provide staff support around any PILT fund discussion. And I had reached out to our finance department. This was more specific to looking at the service establishment area request from Director Birch Jones. But the discussion with our finance department was really that looking to the long term to fund our ag plan implementation work, that PILT funds as grant funds really are not intended to be an annual funding source. And so the finance department was really pleased to see that we were looking to establish a service area for the work in Area B. And I'm only offering this information up here as it's relevant also to the work that we're trying to do in Area B around ag plan implementation, and the motion here for PILT funds to be used for the 2021 implementation, which is great. I just looking to the long term, we may want to also explore establishing a service area in Area D, recognizing that the PILT funds are not our best long-term funding situation for ongoing work around ag plan implementation.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions? I think it's fairly well played. Okay, go ahead, Director Rainbow.
Well, my comment would be that I would fully support that. I know that's a longer process. It's not something we can accomplish in the next few months, and I'd be, I'd likely happy to continue with PILT funds until a service center can be established, and presumably we would do that with a service in the part of Area D which is affected by this, and then some kind of an agreement with the District of Squamish for them providing their share. So that's up to staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Elliott, go ahead.
So just a question. We passed a motion earlier for Director Birch Jones and laughs. Should we pass a similar motion today for this ag plan? Is that, or would staff rather not us add to their to-do list at this point, but put it on a parking lot or a future to-do list? I'm just nervous about adding more to the pile. So I would like some guidance on that part.
Go ahead, CAO Helmer.
Thank you, Chair. If that's the desire of the directors involved, it can certainly be put on the list. The one thing that I would request is that we not put a date on it yet, and that be deferred for discussions when the board is prioritizing those items that are looking for service establishment.
I have Director Rainbow.
Yeah, I'm happy with that approach, but I would also raise this, that I've had discussions in the past with councillors from Squamish about other sort of areas of interest that would require a service establishment. So by all means, let's put this one on the list, but I think that we need to have formal discussions with Squamish to consider some of the other things, for example, support for the library, maybe support for some of the off-road cycling stuff, and so on. So this is not the only thing that is of interest to the District of Squamish and Area D. So I'll just put that out there, but leave it vague and undetermined at this point.
Okay. So are we making a motion to add this to the service area list, but without a due date?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Moved by Director Rainbow. Director Elliott, did you have a comment?
I was thinking that maybe we would add wording that a service or cost center be established to address priorities of Area D and the District of Squamish, which could include, but are not limited to, the agricultural plan, the library, search and rescue.
Okay.
That would be, if that's an amendment you would accept, Director Rainbow, I would second that.
That's a much better wording than I had. So that's fine. I'll second Karen's motion.
Thank you. I saw a hand from Director Birch Jones. Did you have a comment?
Just don't want to see D rushing ahead of B in this department.
No, we don't have a date. You had a date.
You have a date. Okay, thank you. Any final comments? Call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Go ahead, Director Elliott.
I'd like to move the motion we were originally supposed to contemplate,
which we did not have a mover. So moved by Director Elliott. Yeah. Seconded by Director Rainbow. Further discussion on the PILT funds? Call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. 11.4 Minto Communication Society letter of support from Director Demare. And we already sent this, did we not? Go ahead, Director Demare.
Yeah, no, we haven't sent the letter. But I just want to comment on that society. They have put so much work into this. If you remember, I funded a few months back for them to get a consultant to look at all their infrastructure and move forward with it. Well, they did, and all this extra funding came up, and with the restart plan, and oh my Lord, the amount of work that they put into it would just blow you away. And they've done it so professionally, and with the help of Kristen also in some of the aspects of it. But their application is in, and they're waiting February 15th for if they get accepted or not. If they do, it all has to be done by the end of October, and it is a pile of work. Right-of-ways, they got to get right-of-ways. They've got to get on the land tenure that the Slrd has. They have a sublicense agreement on 3 towers. They get approvals on all the amendments, all the work, extra work they're going to do. It is a pile of work for such a tiny little society. So impressed, very impressed with it. But yeah, so I'll move that that motion for this letter of support.
Okay, moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Mack. Further discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 11.5 is Area A PILT funds towards the Bray Lawrence Sewer Upgrade Project and the Alternative Approval Process loan. Go ahead, Director Mayor, you're moving it?
Yes, I'm moving it.
Okay, and seconded by Director Weeb. Any questions or comments? Okay, I'll call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, 12.1. This is the request for a letter of support that we sent, and this is to ratify our decision to send that letter in December. Have someone move? Moved by Director Elliott, seconded by Director Stoner. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And letter 12.2, a letter from the Pemberton District Chamber regarding the Scotiabank closure. Request support by way of a letter to Scotiabank. Could I have someone move that we write that letter? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Crompton. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the, go ahead, Director Birch-Jones.
Thank you. I didn't hear all of what Mayor Richards said about this, but there still is a credit union, right? Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, any further? No, calling the question. Anyone opposed to writing the letter? Motion carries. Thank you. 12.3. A request for resolution on fiber optic corridor Mount Currie to Lillawitt. Would anyone like to make this motion? Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Crompton. Director Mack, go ahead.
No, I was just seconding it. I'm fully in favor. It's a good, good process. So, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Director Elliott.
I think this should be CC'd to the relevant MLAs and MP. I think it's important to keep reminding them that they need to keep pressure on the big telcos, that just because they've put funding forward doesn't mean that the big telcos are going to do what's needed to be done in all these areas. So I think it's important that our letter is CC'd to those folks.
Okay. Shall we make an amendment to the motion to CC? Okay. Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Birch-Jones. Calling the question on the amendment. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now on the main motion as amended, moved by, calling the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We are now 12.4. Silga call for nominations. I think this is just a move receipt. Moved by Director Elliott, seconded by Director Demare. Any discussion? Nope. Call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And Silga call for resolutions. Their deadline is February 26th. So if you have any ideas for Silga, this really applies to Area A, Area B, and Lillawitt. Let us know. But otherwise, move receipt by Director Weeb, seconded by Director Stoner. Call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And 12.6 is a request for support for the Caribou Regional District BC Hydro street lighting rate increase. These letters are all over the place. Go ahead, Director Elliott.
Does anyone have a good way to explain what's going on with this? Because I'm getting letters, but I'm not sure I understand the issue. And I'd like to understand it better if there's anyone in this meeting that can explain it.
Anyone? No. I can ask at my next UBCM meeting, see if there's anyone up in that area that can help shed some light, and I can send that on to you if that would help.
It's curious because it hasn't come from our staff to our council as an issue, and we've done all of our LED conversion or most of it. So I'm trying to get, and I've asked my staff, I haven't heard anything back yet. So I'm trying to get at the heart of what's changed here and how it's impacting local government. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
I'll move receipt.
Move receipt, moved by Director Elliott, seconded by Director Crompton. Call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And 12.7, request for funding from the Bridge River Valley. Go ahead, Director Demare.
I'll have to declare a conflict of interest, as my wife Debbie Demare is engaged with the BRVCA, and so is my daughter Kara, as she's the bookkeeper.
Thank you. You will go in the waiting room. He is gone. Can someone make the motion as laid out? Moved by Director Birch-Jones, seconded by Director Weeb. Any discussion? Director Mack, did you have something? Nope.
No, I was just going to move it or second it.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Let's bring him back.
And I was thinking that the Director Demare or myself could follow up, speak to those mayors regularly at meetings. And I was curious myself to ask more about the lighting situation. I don't see an immediate opportunity for that, but we will have one.
Okay, thank you and welcome back. I just want to do a quick check of the room. How's everyone feeling? Does anyone need a break? Or we can carry on, maybe take a break around 2:30 or so, just to stretch legs. I don't want to.
Aren't we almost done?
We are, but I just like to check because you never know. Okay, thank you. 12.8, request for a letter of support to the Village of Pemberton regarding infrastructure upgrades at 1 Mile Lake. Moved by Director Elliott, second by Director Stoner. Any comments? Call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Request for funding from the Lillawitt Rec Center extended pool opening. This is Director Birch-Jones. Did you want to speak to it?
I'd be happy. They have an amazing goal and they have enthusiasm, and they've done well as a startup. And so I'd like to move to contribute $20,000 from electoral area B PELT funds to support swims.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Director Birch-Jones, second by Director Weeb. Any discussion or further questions, comments? Seeing none, call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 12.10, request for resolution from Lillawitt Lake Estates loan financing and service establishment process. CEO Helmer, I think you wanted to speak to this.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that if the board is looking at this one, that it be directed back to staff to prepare a report and bring it to the board at a future date. It's quite complex, and so we would need to provide staff information in support of the ask.
Okay, so could I have someone move receipt and refer this back to staff? Moved by Director Weeb, seconded by Director Richmond. Any discussion? Call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. 12.11, Permanent Valley Diking District grant funding. Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Richmond. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And there was a 12.12, which was pulling an item from the consent agenda, and I cannot remember what it was right now. Director Clark.
I did. Oh.
Okay, go ahead, Director Clark.
Thank you, Chair. It was the letter from the City of Roslyn pertaining to a letter of support for universal no-cost access to all prescription contraception.
Right. Director Birch Jones, go ahead.
And I asked for that, I think partly because I do believe, did we not write a letter to this effect previously? And also, I was really pleased, and also I want to thank you, CAO Helmer, for including those mandate letters for all the ministers in our package, because I actually read them all. And I did come across under the Minister of Health, Dix, make prescription contraception free for all. I think that's in the works. Although another letter wouldn't hurt. Okay. I was partly checking my memory.
Okay, thank you. So we will move receipt of this item. Moved by Director Stoner, second by Director Elliott. Any further discussion? Call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Is there any late business? No. Okay. Any notice of motion from anyone? No. Okay. Could I have someone, no, we're just recessing, so I get to impose the recess until tomorrow. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
For your time.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.